Hello, Miss B's class. I will be out today and tomorrow Miss Hanson will be in. I got a new book. It's a chapter book that I'm going to start reading for you today. It is called Raya and the Last Dragon. It is a chapter book. So I will continue this on Wednesday when I come back. Prologue. You will find a prologue in a lot of the chapter books. It's just basically telling you what happened before the story happens. Long ago, before our time, there was a land called Kamandra, where humans lived alongside water dragons. The dragons brought water, rain, and peace to the land to help it flourish. The humans lived in harmony, caring for one another. Life was a paradise. But then the Droon came, spreading like wildfire to consume life. Whoever they touched turned to stone. A mindless virus, the Droon cared for nothing. Their only goal was to spread and multiply. Dragons valiantly fought the Droons, battling to save humanity, but it wasn't enough. One by one, the great and the mighty dragons were turned to stone, until there was only one left. When all seemed lost, Sasutra, the last dragon, summoned every bit of her magic and power and placed it in a gem. Then she climbed to the highest point and brought forth a great explosion. When the dust clears, the drones were gone, and so was Sasutra. The humans who had been turned to stone came back to life, but the dragons did not. And all that remained of the Susu was the glowing blue dragon gem, the last remnant of dragon magic. Without the dragons, peace and harmony disappeared. Kamandra split into 5 enemy lands: tail, spine, talon, fang, and heart, that fought to possess the dragon gem. It had to be hidden. The dragon gem now resides in a secret chamber in the heart, guarded by the warrior chief Benja, the baddest blade in all the lands. No one has ever gotten near the gem until now. Chapter 1. In the dark room in the land of heart was a young warrior readied for battle. 12-year-old Raya pulled on gloves. She grabbed her bamboo fighting sticks and tied a dark mask over her face. After a quick pause to pull her hair back, she slipped out into the night. Outside, the dark night air felt charged with electricity. Though whether it was from the thunderstorm or Raya's own excitement, it was hard to say. She ran lightly over the tiled rooftops of the Heart Fortress. Her slippered feet hardly made a sound as she leapt, cat-like, from building to building, and then jumped to the ground. The first raindrops splashed down, covering Raya's tracks, as she hurried towards the chamber of the dragon gem. The fortress sat atop a natural stone arch at the corner of the heart. Beneath the tangle of leaves and vines, Raya found the hidden doorway that led inside. She glanced around, making sure she was unseen, and then sneaked in. Raya crept through the torch-lit tunnels, sliding her hands along the walls. She could feel the shapes of dragons that had been carved there centuries before. Raya paused. Something didn't feel right. There was a groove in the wall that was deeper than the carvings. She knelt and examined the damp cobblestones that lined the tunnel floor. One stone was looser than the rest. Carefully, Raya pressed it. Whoosh! A net dropped from the ceiling, right on the spot where she was standing. But Raya had been expecting it. She rolled backwards and easily dodging the trap. Looks like someone's trying to be clever, Raya mumbled. Reaching into her satchel, she pulled out a small ball covered in hard scales. When she tapped it with her fingers, the ball partly uncurled, revealing two bright black eyes and a cute furry face. All right, Tuk-Tuk, Raya said to the little animal. Let's show him what clever really looks like. She placed her pet on the ground. Tuk-Tuk curled back into a scaly ball, then rolled down the tunnel, triggering more traps, one after another. Nets dropped from the ceiling, but Tuk-Tuk rolled right underneath them. Halfway through, Tuk-Tuk spied a bug. He waddled after it, forgetting all about his job. Tuk-Tuk, Raya whispered. Come on, focus. Tuk-Tuk curled back into a ball and rolled to the end of the tunnel. Raya crawled under the nets to where he was waiting. She gently picked Tuk-Tuk up and patted his head. Hey, bud, that was awesome. Give me some shell. Tuk-Tuk tried to high-five her, but he lost his balance and rolled onto his back. I gotcha, Raya. Raya turned him upright, then placed him back in her satchel. Ahead of her was a large circular stone door. Raya removed her fighting sticks from her belt and unlocked it. Wiggling out of her shoes, leaving them in the entrance, Raya stepped through the opening. She gasped in wonder. Incandescent blue flowers dotted the darkness, like stars, lighting the way. Emerald water flowed against gravity up a flight of stone steps. She was entering the chamber of the dragon gem. Excuse me. 4 great dragon statues held up the ceiling, which was open to the sky. The floor was a pond. And in the center of the chamber, suspended in midair by its own magic, was the glowing dragon gem. Raya took a deep breath. This was it, the moment she'd prepared for all of her life. A series of stepping stones led over the water to the center of the room. Raya started across them, then paused. Wait a second, this feels too easy. She turned and glanced behind her. When she looked forward again, she saw a golden masked warrior standing between her and the gem. Raya's grip tightened on her fighting sticks. Chief Benjo, look. I know it's your job to try and stop me, but you won't, she said. Don't mistake spirit for skill, young one, the chief replied. Behind the gold mask, his voice sounded deep. I promise you will not set foot on the dragon's gem inner circle, not even a toe. Raya glanced back at the sword at his waist. Chief Benja's sword was well known to Raya. Its curved blade could expand into a whip that would take out 3 warriors at once. It wasn't skill alone that made Chief Benja the baddest blade in the land. You might want to take out that blade, Raya said boldly, though her heart was pounding. You're going to need it. Not today. Chief Benja detached his sword from his belt, but he didn't unsheath it. In a quick move, Raya lunged to the left, hoping to catch the warrior off guard. Chief Benja blocked her path. Raya's fighting sticks spun through the air, but each time they missed. When she saw an opening, Raya tried to dodge the chief, but her feet searching for purchase on the slippery rocks, for a moment it seemed like she might slip past. With a swift parry, Chief Benja disarmed her and knocked her down. Her fighting sticks clattered on the stones. Raya sprawled on the ground, struggling to catch her breath. Chief Benja stood over her. For a long second, they stared at each other. Then, with the tip of his sheathed sword, he reached out and tapped Raya's nose. "Boop," he said. He lifted his golden mask. Raya looked up into her father's face. His eyes were full of pride as he smiled down at her. "Like I said, not one foot in the inner circle. You lost, Raya," he said. Raya raised one eyebrow. "Did I?" Her father glanced down. Raya's foot was stretched out in front of her. The tip of her toe rested on the dragon gem's inner circle. "Raya," her father shook his head and chuckled. "I probably should have said 2 feet. Raya stood up, grinning. "Hey, don't beat yourself up too much, Chief Benja. You gave it your best. I won't, and it's either father or ba to you. You did good, Dewdrop," he said. "You passed the test." He held out a hand to Raya, inviting her to join him in the inner circle. Raya paused, savoring the moment. Her dream, at last, had come true. She'd stepped into the inner circle. The dragon gem hovered just inches away, washing her face with blue light. Up close, Raya could see the glimmer within the stone. She could feel the power of its magic. "Wow," she whispered, "the spirit of Sishu." Benja knelt and bowed, raised his hand in a circle before his forehead. Raya did the same. She watched entranced as tiny droplets of water rose into the air, swirling and spreading around the gem. "For generations, our family has sworn to protect the gem," he told his daughter. "Today, you will join that legacy." Benja scooped up a handful of sacred water and poured it over Raya's bowed head. As the water trickled over her face, the droplets began to glow. They floated away from her to join the drops encircling the gem. "Raya, Princess of Heart, my daughter," Benja intoned, "you are now a guardian of the dragon gem." Benja wrapped his arm proudly around his daughter. She leaned her head against his shoulder, at once exhausted and elated. For as long as Raya could remember, she had worked for the rite of passage to guardianship. All the months and years of training had been worth it. This was everything she had ever wanted. Chapter 2. The sun was just starting to rise as Raya and her father left the chamber of the dragon gem. The sound of chickens clucking filled the early morning air, which felt cool against Raya's skin. Her heart sat in the center of the dragon-shaped river, right where the dragon's heart would have been. Fed by water from the great river, the land of Heart was lush and green. Inside the palace, Raya led the way down the halls. She walked a few paces ahead of her father, throwing strokes and kicks as she went. Her father watched in amusement. "Well, someone's excited," he said. "Well, yeah," she said. "I mean, anyone hoping to steal the dragon gem now has to face the fury of the 2 baddest blades in the lands." Well, I'm glad you feel prepared, Dewdrop, because I have something important to tell you. The other lands, they are on their way here as we speak. Raya whirled around. They are? Watching her father nod, she continued. Okay, we can do this. I'm ready. I know exactly how we'll stop them. Really? Tell me what you know about the other lands, he said. Raya's imagination took her to a desert region where a mercenary was sharpening and slashing his blade. She could see it as clearly as if it was before her eyes. First tale, a sweltering desert with sneaky mercenaries who fight dirty. Next, she imagined a port city where a merchant tossed fruit into the air, slicing it with a pair of knives as it fell. Second, Talon, a floating market famous for the fast deals and the fighters with even faster hands. Onto the snow-covered mountains that were home to an army of barbarians. Third, Spine, a fragile bamboo forest guarded by an exceptionally large warrior and their giant axes. Raya explained to her father. Last but not least were the warriors of Fang. Raya imagined them holding big cats in their arms. Fourth, Fang, our fiercest enemy, a nation protected by angry assassins and their even angrier cats. Hiss! Tuk Tuk hissed too as they entered the palace kitchen. Okay, so we're going to need crossbows and catapults. Oh, and what about flaming catapults, she said. Benjai added ingredients into a simmering pot. Or how about shrimp pate from tail, lemongrass from talon, bamboo shoots from spine, chilies from fang, and palm sugar from the heart. We'll poison them, she asked. No, we're not going to poison them, and we're not going to fight them. We're going to share a meal with them. Benja said as he handed her a bowl of soup. Wait, what? Raya stared at her father. I invited them. But they're our enemies, Raya said, confused. They're only our enemies because they think the dragon gem magically brings us prosperity, he said. Raya scoffed. That's ridiculous. It doesn't do that. They assume it does, just like we assume things about them. Raya, there's a reason why each level is named after a part of the dragon. We were once unified as one. That's ancient history, Ba, she said, sipping the soup. But it doesn't have to be. Listen, if we don't stop and learn to trust one another again, it's only a matter of time before we tear each other apart. That isn't the world I want you to live in. Raya sighed. I believe that we can be Kamundra again, but someone has to take the first step. Trust me. Raya looked at her father. She did trust him. Chief Benja had never steered Hart wrong. Surely he knew what he was doing. Chapter 3. The next day, the chiefs of Tail, Talon, Spine, and Fang arrived in Hart. Raya accompanied her father to welcome them. Dressed in blue and gold silk, the two stood side by side on the bridge that connected Hart to the mainland. Together, they looked out at a crowd. For the chiefs had not come alone. Each had arrived with an army of warriors. The clans stood apart from one another, identified by pennants bearing the symbols of their land. But Raya hardly noticed the colorful flags. She was focused on the swords and spears that bristled from the crowd. Things look a little tense, Ba, she whispered. Don't worry, I'm going to open with a joke. he whispered back. Raya rolled her eyes. Please don't. I'm kidding, he said. Then he stepped forward, held out his arms in greeting. Raising his voice to be heard by all, he called out, People of tail, talon, spine, and fang, welcome to the heart. For far too long we have been enemies, but today is a new day. Today we can be Kamundra again. Smiling warmly, he stepped aside, inviting the other clans to cross the bridge and enter Heart. No one moved. The chiefs regarded Benja with narrowing eyes, their faces etched with suspicion. Nice speech, Chief Benja, growled the chief of Tail. She was a small woman dressed in earth-colored clothes. But why did you really bring us here? Are you going to rob us? Why would he need to rob us? The land of Heart already has everything, snarled an imposing man wearing vibrant purple robes. He was Dang Hai, the fierce-looking chief of Talon. It's easy when you hold the mightiest weapon in the world, shouted the chief of the spine, a burly warrior dressed in furs. The gem's not a weapon. It's a sacred relic, the chief replied. A chorus of angry voices filled the air as the leaders began to shout over one another. Raya looked around. This was not going to be what her father had planned. She noticed a girl her age, the only other kid there. When their eyes met, they shared a smile. Raya stepped forward, bowed respectfully to the clans, and said, I have something to say. Silence fell over the crowd. She continued, Who's hungry? A lone hand went up. It belonged to a warrior from Spine, but he quickly lowered it when his fellow warriors shot him disapproving looks. The other girl giggled at him. She looked up at her mother, Varana, the chief of Fang. Go ahead. It's all right, said Varana. The Fang princess walked over to Raya. Like her mother, she was dressed in white silk. Her short black hair fell like a curtain over half of her face. The other side of her head was shaved. I'm Namaria of Fang, she said. Hi, Namaria. I'm Raya. She noticed someone was wearing a necklace with a dragon-shaped pendant. Is that Sisu? Raya asked, pointing to it. Then she caught herself. Sorry, yeah. I might be a little bit of a dragon nerd. Namaria smiled. Hey, I'm the one wearing the Suka fan necklace. Ray returned the smile. Right then, she decided she liked the princess. Come on, have you eaten yet? Side by side, the two new friends walked across the bridge. Watching them, Chief Benja smiled with pride. The sight of the two girls together seemed to pacify the other grown-ups. At a sign from the chiefs, the warriors lowered their swords. The clans followed their leaders across the bridge into Heart. Awaiting them was a celebration like none Raya had ever seen. The great hall of the Heart Palace had been decorated with fresh flowers and silk curtains. The tables were piled high with rice cakes, dumplings, spring rolls, buns, fruit, and other good things to eat. A band played lively music. Yet for all the festive trappings, the atmosphere was tense. The chiefs stood apart, eyeing one another suspiciously. Only Raya and Namaria were having fun. They sat at the edge of the room with Tuk Tuk, each holding a tray of snacks. Seriously, your mom actually said that? Awkward. Okay, next question. Hand to hand or swords? Raya asked. Blades all day, was the answer. Right. Okay, dressy or casual? Only a monster would choose to wear this outfit on the regular. Rice or stew? To Raya's surprise, I didn't think that'd stump you. This is actually one of the first times I've had rice in a while. Really? Said Raya. Fang may look nice on the outside, but we have some pretty big holes in our inside. Oh, Raya didn't know what to say. Sorry, didn't mean to bring it down. While she quickly flashed a smile. So where are we? We both have single-part parents who are terrible at telling jokes. We're both warrior women who despise uncomfortable formal wear, and we're both Sizu superfans. Namaria lowered her voice. You know, Fang legend says she's Stella there. Sizu? You're kidding, right? Namaria glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Hey, you want to see something? From the fold of her tunic, she withdrew an ancient manuscript. Raya could tell from the way Namira held it that it was very old and very special. Are you supposed to have that? Raya whispered. Namaria laughed. No, she said, as if it was obvious. Carefully, she unfolded the fragile palm leaves that made up the manuscript. It was covered with intricate design. Raya could tell it was a scene depicting Suza and the Droon. According to this, after the mighty Sisu blasted away all the Droon, she fell into the water and floated downstream. Legend says she's now sleeping at the river's end. Tuk-Tuk wandered over to sniff the manuscript. Raya patted his shell absently. But which river? She asked. There's like hundreds. I don't know, Namaria admitted. But if we could find it, could you imagine? A dragon back in the world? Things could be so much better. Yeah, maybe we really could be. Here, Namaria said. She took off her dragon necklace and held it to Raya. Whoa, really? Raya asked, accepting the gift. From one dragon nerd to another. Raya looked at the dragon pendant and back at Namaria. Her father said she needed to trust, and she trusted Namaria. Suddenly, she knew what to do. Hey, come with me. Depla, using the Commandarin phrase for best friend. I want to show you something. She stood, brushing a few grains of rice from her tunic. Namaria gave her a cautious look, then stood too. Unnoticed by any of the grown-ups, they stole away from the palace. Tuk-Tuk snatched a quick bite of food and then scurried after them. Chapter 4. Raya led Namaria down the long tunnel to the chamber of the dragon gem, the same one Raya had passed through in her initiation the day before. This time, there were no nets to slow them down. As an official guardian, Raya now knew how to deactivate the traps. Within moments, they reached the circular door. At the entrance to the inner chambers, the girls slipped off their shoes. Raya led the way up the stairs. When Namaria stepped into the great chamber and saw the dragon gem, her eyes widened. The spirit of Sishu. I can feel it. Namaria's voice was full of awe. She bowed and formed her hands in a circle in front of her. Raya smiled. She knew just how Namaria felt. It's the last bit of dragon magic left in the whole world. Okay, that will be it for today. Tomorrow, when Miss Hanson's in, she has some books she wants to read. So I will continue this on Wednesday when I get back in.